No woman, no cry. No woman, no cry. Little darling, don't shed no tear. No woman, no cry. Good friends we have, and good friends we've lost along the way. In this great future, you can't forget your past. So dry your tears, I say. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright now. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be.
I am queen of the most powerful nation in the world, and my entire family is gone. Have I not given everything?
Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright.
And when I wake up,
No woman, no cry. I remember when we used to say, welcome back, fellow lords of gaming, to a trailer breakdown for Marvel's Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Man, oh man, I can tell you right now, this it hit all the feels. A lot of feels there. Yeah, a lot of feels. You would understand how much feels that this hit for me if I actually finally showed you guys my screen setup. I'm literally flanked by a picture of Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa and Michael B. Jordan's Killmonger to my left and right of my screens. I am a huge Black Panther fan and a stan somewhat in that regards. And yeah, knowing that we're going forward, I definitely feel like the T'Challa role needed to be recast or at the very least needed to be carried on. And luckily, it looks like that's what we're getting. So let's break down the trailer. So immediately right here, what we open up with is a scene of Lupita Nyong'o's character basically staring out at the sea, which is kind of ominous because if you notice in the background right here, it looks like we've got somewhat of a ziggurat. Like, I mean, this doesn't look like traditional like pyramids that would have been situated in Africa, with, you know, which gets to a lot of the other points as well. We've got longer hair locks inside of her. I gotta remember not to call them dreadlocks anymore. We got longer locks and we've got some green suits inside here. So this is an interesting look overall inside the character view as she look out. But I think it's important that this ziggurat, like, you know, is there because typically when we see structures like this is more indicative of meso cultures, like you know what I mean by is like South American or North American Taino cultures and stuff like that, more than they are African pyramids and stuff, at least from my understanding of history, right? That's just my understanding. Next up, we're treated to a scene of Okoye and the Queen's entrance, and we see that we have the Queen Mother sitting in the throne. This actually looks to be a new throne as well. Obviously, we all understood that, you know, going in, they were going to have to play this off some kind of way. Angela Bassett, I swear to God, man, she has aged so gracefully. Like, look at the majesty of this woman right here. Like, I mean, the absolute majesty of the way she looks here, dressed up, robed, and everything. Like, I mean, this woman just stays fit. Oh my God, she is beautiful, right? So she's flanked by the Dora Milaje, the Dora Malay Milage, sitting over here, and then we get this very nice. You know what's funny is that this dance, this high leg stomp, I don't know what it's called. I would have to look up the cultural thing of it, but it looks like that's what they're about to be engaged in, and I just think it's such a beautiful scene. I'm wondering if this is going to be a funeral passing for T'Challa, the homage scene for him. I've got to imagine that that's what it's going to be. There you see like the zoomed in view, however, of, I believe that character is Io. I think that's what her name was. It could be Shuri. Like, it's weird because I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's Io though. Might be important though here, so we can see them in what seems to be a procession. I'm assuming this is going to be a joyous funeral celebration. And Dinah Guerrero, I can't say her name. She's absolutely beautiful. Look at that. And then here we have, obviously, this is a crying Letitia Wright. We can obviously assume that they're going to tell a story of T'Challa's passing. We might not obviously get to see the passing, but we're getting something there. Now, here's an important scene for you guys, right? So essentially, for those people who don't know, this is going to be the introduction of Namor, the Submariner. Now, interestingly enough, this looks like it's going to be a complete original story for Namor. And I say this mostly because if you look at this scene, this is going to be some form of Atlantean culture. We don't know exactly how they're going to be represented. At the very least, let me put it this way, right? At the very least, you understand that from Namor's past that he was a half-breed in terms of Atlantean and human, all right? He traditionally had a very, I would say, like, in my estimation, he had a very Southeast Asian look to him, in terms of like his overall ethnic makeup. But here we're getting a very different approach to the character, because I think we're going to see a very Mayan, Aztecan kind of look to Namor, especially as you see these scenes. But here we get the backstory, or at least what appears to be the origin story for Namor, because you can see right here, if you missed out on it, you essentially see him being given birth, right? And that's his mother giving a water birth to him. But you notice that his wings are here. Now, for those who aren't aware, Namor was basically redefined inside the Marvel 616 universe as being the first mutant. Now, whether or not that's going to be the story that's be told, because Namor's supposed to be like hundreds of years old. Like, I mean, this dude literally is one of the oldest around. Whether or not we're going to get a story in regards to that is going to be different. Whether or not we're going to get this Atlantean culture as well is going to possibly be different as well, because what we're seeing here doesn't really seem reminiscent of Atlantean technology and culture mash. But that's not to say that this can't be, because like we saw with the Afrofuturism that Ryan Coogler basically did with Wakanda, they could more than likely still do like a Mayan futurism, as Mayan Aztecan. I don't know what to call that, to wrap up and consume that whole culture brand in, and I don't want to do that and be disrespectful of anyone's culture either. But we clearly are getting some very Meso South American vibes from Namor's introduction. So you see the baby being born, Ryan Coogler, and you see this scene right here of, let me go back to that. You see this scene here of, Namor, and you get this kind of like light array, which is kind of weird because we've got, Aquaman, who obviously, Jason Momoa's Aquaman, and he's very Pacific Islander, redefined in terms of the culture way that he has here. But we remember some of these like blue ball bubbles. So obviously here, this is what I meant by like, whether or not they're going to be able to do this Mayan. And if I please, I swear to God, you're watching this video, I'm not trying to offend anybody because I can't necessarily say this is Mayan. I can't say it's Aztecian. You get what I'm saying by this. It's South American culture. So is it going to be South American futurism mixed into like technology and some of the, you know, old stuff? That's basically what I'm trying to say by this, right? Gotta be so careful with your words these days, right? So we see this very beautiful view of who I assume this is going to be Namor in the foreground right here. We can't really make out the face so much, but I'm assuming this is him right there. But we see the headpiece and everything like that. This is a very interesting headdress. It's very beautiful. And then we get this view right here of his people seemingly riding a whale. Now we can assume that these are warriors from the things that they're holding and the armor pieces that they're also wearing. Hard to believe that this isn't going to be, you know, those kind of people. We're automatically treated to this scene right here, which should be very interesting. And this is the reason why I still believe that they're going somewhat inside the Atlantean culture. But we notice that it's inside a ship interior here. And I want to go back to that scene because I'm assuming that this is some kind of paramilitary force. And now my assumption, my first thought would be to say that this is American military, that they're literally capturing a Wakandan vessel that is literally that they're planning on taking some stuff. But this part right here seems to be different, right? It almost like they have a mashup because you can see the security guards that are here, right? We essentially have white males and we have, you know, guards in black security uniforms, very different from the paramilitary forces in the next video, in the next shot. And we see these men in these huge dive suits. Now, my assumption is that these dive suits are because these people are looking for Atlantis or the Atlantean culture that's going to be represented by Huerto Tecona, I think is his name, that we're seeing here. So that's going to be interesting in and of itself, right? So that's what I think that is. But I think these are two separate scenes that are playing out here. This is a paramilitary scene that you can see that it could be a ship from these staircases. It could be just a facility, but I think that the ship and this are two separate things, and I'm interested to understand what's going on. Now, my assumption automatically is to say that is that. Now, what we have here is Shuri sitting on a bed of fire or a lake that's inflamed. Now, my assumption is that this is going to be Shuri's ascension to the Black Panther throne. I think that that's what we're seeing here because there's a lot of imagery here that she's alone, right? This cannot be with the throne there. This to me does not seem like a scene that you just get as a, you know, like how to say it, like as just a throw off that this is actually a scene in a movie where somebody's doing it. I feel like this is probably a vision scene, similar to like when T'Challa visited the Black Panther's past and so forth like that. That's my assumption. Now here goes a really pivotal moment inside this movie that's coming. We see Shuri's character and she's meeting with Riri Williams or Ironheart. Now this is going to be pivotal because I think this is important because they might redefine the way that Ironheart is introduced into the movie and introduced into the MCU, where maybe she's part of that science generation or that science center that the Wakandans help establish in LA. We see that this looks to be a black woman over here, and I'm thinking maybe that is. Now, I want you guys to pay particular attention to this because I found that this was really important. This is clearly Letitia Wright, Shuri, right? But I want you to pay attention to her body mass. Letitia Wright has been putting on muscle, similar to Natalie Portman and Jane Foster, and I think this is going to be important. But we'll get to that in a second. So she's dapping up Riri really similar to the way that they did with Now, here goes the important piece of this, right? Is that I'm assuming this is a very young Namor. And if you look at the garb that he's wearing, it points to that. Like, I'm just going to keep pointing out and saying Mayan, right? But I want you to pay attention here that he's flanked by these blue-skinned individuals who are seemingly wearing breathing apparatus. or apparati, I think it is. They're wearing some kind of apparatus that is allowing them to breathe. And I'm assuming that these are the Atlanteans from the deep sea who are coming up because he's a half-breed. But now the interesting thing is that if you go back, he doesn't particularly look like his mother is blue skin. And maybe it's because of the water. I can't really tell. But so I'm interested to see how that plays out, right? And then we see him emerging. Now, important here is that right after that scene, you can see him emerging here from the waters. It's like literally him coming forward. It's a very beautiful garb, by the way. And you can see the people on land here are blue skinned as well, right? So they're blue skinned as well. Now, what I can't see because it's way too off in the foreground, but it doesn't appear that they're wearing the apparatus on their face. Apparatus, breathing apparatus on their face. So it'll be interesting to see.
I am queen of the most powerful nation.
So here we go with who I think this was in the beginning. That's Io. She's one of the Dora Milaje, and this is why it's
In the world,
we see even Lupita Nyong'o has
and
grown
my
out
entire
here with some
family
locks.
is
And then we see seemingly it's the Queen of Wakanda addressing the United Nations. My assessment would be that she's flanked by some security guards or possible people from here. But I think this is basically her going to address the UN and basically, you know, about T'Challa's death here. I think that's what this is from. And then we get this very awesome scene, right, this imagery right here. And this is why I think it's the celebration of Chadwick Boseman. And, you know, like instead of having a solemn, sad funeral for Chadwick Boseman inside the scene, that they're going to have this party. You know what I mean? So it's really interesting.
Have I not given everything?
And then here we are back to seeing the blue-skinned individuals, and you can see they are back to this very, you know, Asiatic kind of look as well. And they are once again wearing the mouth breathers in this scene. This is absolutely beautiful headdress. We see some bone, presumably from some kind of, you know, sea creature here. Very nicely adorned, you know, armor and stuff inside here. And this headdress is just that. The colors, wow, they're just beautiful. Yeah, just beautiful. And then we get that we get that really brief scene of and it does it so quickly, but we get this really brief scene of the agent right here. And this is why I think there's going to be some U.S. involvement inside here, some nation building more than likely. And then you see Riri Williams, you know, knocking out this icon, the symbol for her. That's the Iron Heart symbol right there. And seemingly just like Tony Stark when he built his first armor. Now, for those of you who are unaware of the Iron Heart story, she was basically, you know, Iron Man smart. So it'd be interesting to see this. Now, here goes the bit where I believe that we are going to get some of this Meso-futurism as well as Mayan futurism, because you see the blue-skinned individuals. You obviously see a standing Namor. Hector Tocona looks very powerful here, especially with his winged feet. He can fly, so somewhat limited, right? And then we see these blue-skinned individuals, and we see somewhat of some kind of futurism here. Now, and they're being attacked, it seems. So whether or not they are on the shores of Wakanda or they're on their own territory is going to be interesting. But we essentially get the very next scene where you see M'Baku basically launching himself off here. Now, the interesting thing is that you see that the blue people here are bowing to Namor, and he's talking to one as M'Baku basically just goes up and he's basically attacking them. The reason, the question of why you would have the Atlanteans attacking or the Wakandans attacking the Atlanteans, that's obviously going to be something that needs to be addressed, right? But I want you to pay attention to this scene here as well, because this is important. We see the Dora Milaje, and they're basically squaring off against this character. Now, it's kind of hard to make out who the character is at first, so I'm going to play this back kind of slowly. So obviously this doesn't look like Dana Garai's character. Who I think this is Io. And if you aren't aware of the story of Io and Anika, who are basically two of the Dora Milaje, who basically like they they go off and they do their own thing. Basically, they leave the Dora Milaje and they basically become vigilantes because they're trying to help out like the people who are unseen, the unheard, the the have-nots that are existing within inside Wakanda. You can obviously see Denai Okoye, Denai Guerrera's character, I can't fucking say her name, back here, and I think that's who it is. And she's wearing this armor. I can't remember the name of the armor as well, but the armor is important to the story. Anika and Ayo are actually lovers in the story as well, so you'll see who Anika is in a second here. But it's kind of important that she's squaring off against those characters. There we go. So here we can see Michaela Cole. I think that's how you say her name, Michaela Cole. Her character is basically joining. Now she's standing with an assortment of characters against something. But my assumption is going to be that Anika and Ayo's story will be introduced as a way to bridge the gap towards the next T'Challa being chosen or being born. And I have an interesting theory about this, right? So it's interesting because you see the flooding of the temple here, or the throne room for the for Wakanda is being flooded, and you see this massive flooding event happening. Meanwhile, you see Namor here in his garb. It looks so beautiful, right? And you see that garb basically being worn there. And you see this striking that's happening here underwater, but let's play this. So there's essentially flooding, but it's interesting inside this flooding. I wonder if this is like a thing in error, because the little kid here, I can't tell if he's exactly like scared or not, but he looks like he's almost enjoying it at some point here, but I don't know. But this looks like it's a flooding of Wakanda, basically, presumably brought by the We don't know who is facing off here, but then we get this really awesome shot of Takonak's character. Let me look up this man's name, because I think I swear to God, I'm messing up this dude's name, and I'm gonna be really bad. There's gonna be a lot of people who are pissed off at me if I'm really screwing this dude's name up. So let me take a look at this really quickly. It's Tenoch Huerta. Okay, so I'm saying that wrong, and I apologize. But this is a very beautiful look of a redone Namor. I don't have any problems with this in my mind. I see that there's going to probably be some fanboys, but we can see the Dora Milaje facing off against this paramilitary force, presumably from that same facility. So how that's going to play out. And then we see Namor ascending to his throne, which looks like here, which is flanked by like maybe a megalodon or something like that with his teeth. So you can see here that this scene is clearly, it's the Dora Milaje facing off against the blue-skinned Atlanteans at this point. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, there's a long storied history inside the comics with the Atlanteans facing off against the Wakandans. And at the latest war that they had was basically when Namor was granted a splinter of power from the Phoenix Force, and he basically used that power, and Doom, I think, was involved with it as well. And Thanos was involved as well to attack the Wakandan Empire. So interesting. Now, here goes the interesting thing, right? Is that we see this figure here at the end of the trailer, and you can see what looks to be Namor in the background here, and we get a very black and gold adorned Black Panther appearing here. Now, this is my assumption, right? And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, as I'm going to say this. But if you had to look at this body, right? And I had to say, this is not a man. If you don't understand what I mean by that, is like if you looked at Chadwick Boseman's stunt double, I cannot remember his name, but he also did the mod capture for Black Panther inside Marvel's Avengers. He's a very thick-bodied individual. The person who's walking around in a suit along with T'Challa was very thick-bodied. But if you look here, this is a very lithe, very lean, sort of person sitting in a suit. I would have to presume that this is a woman. I have to believe that this is a woman. Like the way the legs are shaped, the arms and everything like that. Even if you were to look at the elbow areas and so forth, the waistline and everything inside here, this is a very lithe woman. This is a very, you know, this to me looks like a woman's body here. Now, the significance of this is because I feel like they're going to step Letitia Wright up into the role of Black Panther, which totally makes sense for the story. She served in the role as Black Panther for a while. When T'Challa went away from the role, obviously this would have to be a significant move. Now, and this is why I bring you back to the original point that when you looked at Letitia Wright over there, she was very, very, you know, she was definitely looked like she hulked up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like she worked out. So I believe this is going to be Letitia Wright. Second guess would be that this would be Michaela Cole's character. And what I'm saying by that is that if you remember Anika and Io's story that I referenced, and you go back to that, Anika and Io were basically inside the world, and they basically upended somewhat of the royal culture inside of Wakanda, and basically had this pseudo democracy instilled. So could we see a different person not from the royal family be in this role? Quite possibly. And if I had to go with anybody besides Letitia Wright's Shuri, I would go with probably Michael Cole's character, especially because she's so young. You could lean on her for years to come inside the MCU. Nothing to say against Letitia Wright, because I would love to see her in that role. She was just amazing and awesome. And that's the trailer, right? When we get this beautiful, you know, silver into this. Now, be aware that Kevin Feige went on stage and basically said that this is the Wakandan story is going to be the official end to MCU Phase 4. And then we will move into Phase 5 of the MCU, where we had announcements for the Quantum Mania. We had announcements for the Thunderbolts, Daredevil, Ironheart. We had so many announcements. I'll go over all that in another trailer, but I really wanted to break down this trailer. I know it was like 2 minutes, but there were a lot of points that I wanted to get to, so that's why the video is so long. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, peace.